Books on Tape presents The Speckled Monster, a historical tale of battling smallpox, by Jennifer Lee Carrell. Read by Michael Prichard. Introduction. In Georgian London, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu sweeps out of a palatial bedroom in a swirl of satin and silk, her 3-year-old daughter in tow. The servants are impassive as she floats by, but in her wake their faces pinch in disgust, and their eyes meet in knowing glances. "Unnatural," hisses the nurse to a maid. Ignoring them, she descends the grand staircase like the Duke's daughter she is. But at the tall doors to the street she pauses. She has grown accustomed to the delicate razors wielded in the plumed, powdered, and diamond-frosted high society of aristocrats and artists. Countesses and poets, once proud to claim her acquaintance, now make ostentatiously absurd claims to parade out of any room she enters. But even that is less harrowing than what happens in public. She sets her shoulders and nods to the footmen, who swing open the doors. As she steps into the street, heads turn, and people begin pointing and jeering. Just as the door closes on the safe haven of her coach, a servant in silver livery hands her a tray of carefully stacked notes. Even as some mothers teach their children to taunt her, others send footmen day and night to beg for her presence. When they find her away from home, they fan out through the winding lanes of London to track down her carriage, wherever she may be. In colonial Boston, Zabdiel Boylston rides down a muddy street. His black slave, Jack, follows on a mule, packing a satchel full of the tools of Boylston's trade. He's a general surgeon and an apothecary, or pharmacist. He's never been to college, but the townspeople call him Doctor anyway, in honor of his skill. After years of practice, and before that, years of apprenticeship with his father, he's the most trusted medical man in town. A recent arrival from Scotland, William Douglas, is beginning to protest, however. Dr. Douglas may be 12 years younger than Boylston, but after studying at no fewer than 4 European universities, he has earned a proper medical degree. His peacock pride is infuriated by the mere presence of this untrained competitor for his fees, and even more so by the trust the provincial fools of Boston put in him. So far, Boylston has paid no mind to Douglas's sneers. He cares little for tradition or titles. What he cares about are honest, hard work and results. That was before the recent outbreak of smallpox, however. Now, like Lady Mary, Boylston is hooted at and splattered intentionally with filth whenever he steps into the street. For fear of lynch mobs, his wife and friends beg him not to go out after dusk. But the stealthy knocks keep coming, followed by urgently whispered requests. "Will you come now, before it's too late?" Always he gives Jack the nod, puts on his coat, and goes out. This is a tale of 2 smallpox-haunted cities, and the 2 unlikely heroes, both outsiders to the elite ranks of the medical profession, who began the fight against that terrible disease in the Western world in the 1720s. Lady Mary Wortley Montagu and Zabdiel Boylston were not scientists. Their struggles against smallpox were not systematic or even logical, according to the medical knowledge of the day. Their crusades against the speckled monster of smallpox were deeply personal. Beyond speaking English, Lady Mary and Boylston had almost nothing in common. Lady Mary was the daughter of one of the British Empire's wealthiest and most powerful dukes, and the wife of one of its wealthiest private subjects. Shuttling between palatial London town homes and grandiose country estates, she had been surrounded by opulence since birth. She was a study in contrasts, celebrated since childhood as a small black-haired beauty. She cared more for rapier duels in the world of the mind than fame in the world of fashion. She spent hours reading romances and travel adventures in her father's plush library, and she loved biting word-play and wild flights of the imagination. Very early she began scribbling her own stories. She was a Georgian Scheherazade, who had the habit of telling her life story as a fairy tale. But her heroines, like herself, were not docile princesses meekly awaiting rescue, though in the age's spirit of mockery she christened one of them Princess Docile. Lady Mary's heroines were rebels who got themselves into trouble. She was also one of the greatest letter-writers to grace the English language. Even in hurried or teasing notes she tells stories, deftly sketching scenes and dialogue and catching quirks of character. Thankfully, many of her correspondents recognized masterpieces when they saw them, and saved her letters. She herself edited the letters she wrote home during her travels to Turkey, arranging for their publication after her death. Her diary has a more frustrating history. Begun when she was young, it grew to many volumes. If it had survived, it would offer a woman's early 18th-century rival to the Chatter of Samuel Pepys, whose diary remains one of the most entertaining and encyclopedic descriptions of late 17th-century life in London. Unfortunately, Lady Mary's diary, like a great deal of women's writing from that period, was burned by her loving family for the sake of preserving reputations, hers included. All that remains of her journals are the memories that her granddaughter, Lady Louisa Stuart, retained of having read a few of the volumes many years before, set down in writing in 1837 as Biographical Anecdotes of Lady M.W. Montagu. In high contrast, Zabdiel Boylston wrote only when necessary. Boylston was a third-generation colonist who had grown up hunting, fishing, farming, and doctoring on the fringes of a vast wilderness half the world away, in the western hamlet of Muddy River, Massachusetts. Now known as Brookline, his birthplace was tiny and provincial even by the standards of the booming frontier port where he would eventually make his home, Boston, then sandwiched between the sea and the seemingly endless American forest. To Boylston, words were tools to be used sparingly. He had learned his profession not from books, but from long practical apprenticeship with his physician father. In 1726, certainly at the behest of the Royal Society, and possibly at the request of the Princess of Wales, he told his side of the story in An Historical Account of the Smallpox Inoculated in New England, including his case notes for inoculations performed in Boston in 1721 and 1722. It is a deliberately dry format, careful and concise. Even so, a wry wit shines through. Though capable of humor, he was, for the most part, laconic, stubbornly upright and independent, an early incarnation of the American frontier hero. Boylston and Lady Mary shared one crucial experience, as even a fleeting glance at their scarred faces could have told. They had both won vicious battles against smallpox. They knew firsthand the horror of a disease that could turn people into grossly swollen, groaning monsters, barely recognizable as human, bubbling with pus and reeking with the sickly, sweet smell of rotting flesh. They knew the agony of skin that felt sheeted in flame, and a mouth and throat so full of sores that some victims died of thirst rather than endure the pain of swallowing. That lone shared struggle turned out to be enough to make them change the world, at the same time and in the same way, though unknown to each other. In telling this tale, I have tried to remain faithful to its
Sample complete. Ready to continue?